Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me as always. I'm so grateful for all the support. And as always, I'm going to ask one quick favor right off the top, which is please, if you don't mind, do share this with somebody. If you get some value from this, put a link on LinkedIn or put a screenshot on Instagram or send a text message to your mom or your friend or whoever might be interested in this conversation. I have the one and only Dr. Justin Kwan back on for a second time. Justin is the head of myopia management at CooperVision. He doesn't like saying head of. He's the lead. He is the person who's really directing this huge ship, this myopia management ship at CooperVision. Previously was a professor at SCCO for 8 years. He doesn't look like he's been around that long. Come on, he's much younger. And as he says, he is a proud father of 2 pre-myopes, which is kind of funny but sad at the same time. And you know what, Justin and I, we had the pleasure of just mainly I had the pleasure of running into Justin in Quebec City just like a week ago. That was kind of a fun random thing, and we got to chit chat a little bit. And it's amazing to have you back on, Justin. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Harbir. I'm excited for this. Always something I look forward to.
Yeah, thanks. And I wanted to quickly shape or frame the conversation here, right? We want to talk about myopia management, but I feel like when I say that, there's like a collective kind of groan from the audience. Oh, more myopia management. But really, we're talking about, we want to make this a different type of conversation. It's not like, okay, what do you prescribe for this type of patient or how do you integrate? It's like pivotal changes that are happening in the myopia management landscape. Like what is changing? What has changed over the last year or, 8-9 months since we spoke last? And how can people really how can ODs reach their potential to serve their patients the best? And I think there's going to be some really great data and information that you're going to share in this conversation. So just because you see myopia management in the title or you hear me say myopia management doesn't mean it's the same old conversation. Make sure you stick around for this one. So Justin, tell us, what's relevant right now? Tell us, actually, maybe let's start with this. Give us a little bit more background on yourself. Maybe somebody who doesn't know you or didn't hear the last conversation.
Yeah, so a lot of folks ask how I even ended up here at CooperVision. It really was my rep texting me, even though I had moved away from California. Currently I'm in Chicago. And I was like, wow, as a -10 myself and my wife being a -10, I thought this.
Wow, you're both -10.
Yeah, both of us.
Okay, now I get the pre-myope thing.
Yes, exactly. But man, being 10 years out of school and just seizing the opportunity to, participate in a large scale way to help our colleagues. We say the profession, but it always comes down to people, right? And so I really thought that this would just jump at that chance. And now, even over the past 4 years being with CooperVision, our team of full-time optometrists has grown to 3. So 3 other ODs report into me, which is I'm so lucky to have them support our efforts, and that's really kind of CooperVision's commitment to having the OD be a part of the conversation. So yeah,
that's amazing.
A lot of doctor education.
Yeah, I didn't realize. So in addition to yourself, there's 3 other ODs that are full-time at Cooper.
Just for myopia, yeah.
Wow.
And then there's another 6 full-time ODs for the rest of our CooperVision.
Wow.
Efforts.
This is a little off topic, but I feel like this, and Cooper obviously is seeming to lead the way here, but that is seeming like a much bigger presence than there used to be just in the last 5 years or so. Maybe I'm wrong with the timing, but there's many more ODs coming into industry and working with, partners in the industry. And that's cool to see, because I think it helps that relationship to build a lot better.
Yeah. And you think, oh, more people kind of, less work and can spread it around, but we're all super duper busy like you are, Harbir. And so that, I think that's a testament to just how healthy and thriving the optometric profession is.
Yeah, that's a good sign. I think that is a good sign. I'm not that busy, I was away for a week and nothing changed, so it's all good.
For good reason, though.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. So let's go back to the question I was asking you. I know you want to talk about what's relevant right now, what's changed maybe in the last little while.
And I guess that question kind of, for me, I think about SMART goals, or specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and timely. And we're in summertime, right? And I think you and I and our families and others have taken family vacations and things like that. But always on our mind is the back to school period, and when kids are in camp and doing other sorts of things. But there is a bit more time besides just after school to get that comprehensive eye exam done. I just took my daughter Samantha, who's almost 6 years old, for her eye exam last Friday, visiting a colleague who opened cold. And I can't help but think, man, there's still so many children and young children that haven't gotten their comprehensive eye exam in 1 year, 2 years, or ever. It always starts with there, because we can't even have the myopia conversation until until that family is in our practice. So yes, back to school is already on our mind.
I think I think the timing's pretty relevant for back to school. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is sort of a nuance here, but some schools go back sooner, right? There's some kids that go back to school in August, right? That's only, from right now we're recording middle of July, but when this goes live, it's likely going to be the beginning of August. So it's really pretty relevant timing for sure. So tell us about what Cooper is doing.
So kind of related to that, like every summer. So every summer for the past 4 years, we do a direct-to-consumer campaign, which I don't want to shy away from, that it's millions of dollars of investment. And we know like those dollars could probably serve better if we like do more events and workshops OD to OD, but we have kind of that obligation and responsibility to educate the public in a way that directs them back to you all as the optometrists, as the subject matter experts, if you will, of your community. So yeah, we definitely target parents of our age demographic that have children and that may have more likelihood of myopia, and we send them to mysight.com. Make sure that you have a fit set, then you'll be on our doctor locator. And that, if a parent is searching by zip code, the doctors that have gotten started will kind of populate to the top as far as MySight One Day goes. And then hopefully you'll get a few new patients through some of our, impressions and the way we send to the website. One thing we're excited about is, again, highlighting this campaign that's titled My Sight Today, Anything Tomorrow. Really a short 15-second clip, as we maybe been on YouTube and have clicked through some of those ads at the 5-second mark, but really kind of captivating the audience, these parents, again, that, wow, their child has this amazing, like limitless future ahead of them, and we shouldn't let, again, myopia or nearsightedness hold them back. But just like walking through in very short fashion all the different activities they can do and just how excitable and curious they are. So hopefully we've made that emotional connection in our efforts this summer with direct to consumer, again, to drive the patients back into your offices.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, millions of dollars that you spent, like you said, could probably be spent a little more efficiently in different areas. But that is so important because, like you said, unless for us as optometrists, sure, we could spend some money on doing Google ads and Facebook ads and YouTube ads and that, but the reach is going to be, for me as an individual, much, much, much smaller than a corporation that can spend collectively much, much more money. But it's a bit more in a sense of grassroots. You're hitting patients, potential patients of mine that I would not be able to reach otherwise or might not have reached. So it's really helpful to kind of increase that public awareness and knowledge of the condition of myopia, the idea of myopia management and the treatment options that are available. So they come in asking questions. I saw this commercial on this thing. And that really helps me in the exam room if the patient's already sort of primed to that. So I think that's really valuable. So how, and this is a campaign that Cooper's done before. This is not like a new thing, right? This is sort of an ongoing thing.
Yeah, you may remember back to August of 2020. That's when we used Sarah Michelle Gellar. And then subsequent years we've done different tactics, and can only afford like a celebrity for so much.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. So in this whole conversation of myopia, I know, it's one thing to just say, okay, we have a product, we're selling the MySight lens. Please fit your patient with the MySight lens. But Cooper's doing a lot more to create a community, to create awareness throughout the profession, the industry, and with the public. And the thing I've seen a little bit more recently sort of pop up is the Myopia Collective.
Yeah.
And I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about first of all, I like that name, Myopia Collective.
It
That's
is.
very
Yeah.
cool. Uh,
For sure.
Tell us about where did that come from? What exactly is it?
Yeah. Yeah. About 8 months ago, the leadership at the AOA, the American Optometric Association, met with a few of us at CooperVision to say, like, if AOA is the face of the profession, how do we use the AOA and their talents and resources and their presence to really drive more optometrists to practice myopia management consistently as standard of care and so on.
Hmm.
And yeah, they were all ears, and we stepped up to the visionary level of sponsorship and very quickly. Sometimes these things like take years to materialize, but we put the foot to the metal or whatever the saying is, and got
Pedal
this
to the metal.
Myopia Collective done in a
Yeah.
matter of months. And really is anybody can be a member of the Myopia Collective. And so you can go to myopiacollective.org and sign up to be a member. You'll get quarterly resources and emails. So we won't spam you just once every 3 months. And then part of that initiative is really to really rally the profession and anybody who has a role, a place to play in a growing child's life. So that could be parents, pediatricians, whoever can be a member as well, and your staff and your technicians and your opticians and beyond. But yeah, we have had an open call for change agents. That's another kind
Mm,
of fancy name
mm,
underneath the Myopia Collective.
mm.
So we were able to select change agents in all 50 states and Washington,
Oh,
D.C.,
great.
to be kind of leaders in their states. They may have a little bit of experience in myopia or a lot, but they really are passionate. They may have legislative experience. They may be kind of a pillar in their community and
Mm.
have ideas that they can share with other change agents who will go back to their states and potentially help the members of their states in the Myopia Collective. So it's a way to kind of step up involvement of optometrists and kind of again rally around this very important cause.
Yeah, that's great. So that the change agent position, so that person is that sort of like a point person for like other ODs in the area
Yeah,
to maybe contact, or do they
yeah.
liaise with? Yep.
That is the intent. We're going to bring the change agents to Chicago in September for a workshop, and the AOA is going to lead some sessions. We'll have a keynote. CooperVision will lead some sessions as well. But really, kind of leveraging the experience of some of the change agents to help the less experienced, perhaps,
Yeah, I like
but
that.
to really have a lot of roundtable discussions on what this could look like. How could we just blow this out of the water to really have a strong presence back in your home state and your communities again? So,
Yeah, very good.
yeah, an in-person experience to kind of kick that off in a more formal fashion.
I think we all love that, and I think that's the best way to kind of learn versus, as much as we like to consume content online, but in a
Yeah,
case like that where you're consuming quite a bit, it's always good to be in person, and the energy, it's always the energy of the
yeah, the
people and all of that,
energy.
right? That's like sort of this intangible, you can't measure it.
Yeah,
Um,
for
so
sure.
so I got a couple of follow-up questions on that. First of all, let's stick with like there's currently one for every state in the US,
Mhm.
one change agent that is. If there were other ODs, let's say in Washington
Yeah.
State, who wanted to sort of learn a bit more, how would they connect with that change agent or learn more about the Myopia Collective?
Yeah, we'd probably work through the AOA's relationship with the state associations. So in Washington
Yeah.
State, it would be OPW. But yeah, we haven't really figured that out in concrete detail just yet.
Okay.
But for the change agent workshop, I believe I heard we will be inviting Canadians in.
Okay. Good.
So maybe this could even extend across the border to the different provinces. And maybe there's a future where there's a couple of change agents in every province as well. So
That's
yeah,
excellent. Well, that was
stay
going to be my
tuned.
next question was like if there's a plan of maybe having change agents within Canada, because I think that's a great idea. Obviously, our population is much much smaller, but
Mm,
having a few spread out across the country, again, I like the idea of this sort of this liaison between
mm,
you know, even yourself as an optometrist, but within Cooper, and then an optometrist who's just practicing in that
mhm.
space.
Yeah.
One of the issues I find often is like whether it's dry eye or myopia or some other specialty, we'll have these amazing colleagues come up and speak about how incredible their practices are and what they've built. But there's a gap between most people in the audience and that person on stage. And
Yeah.
a lot of us are
Yeah.
standing there like, okay, but what was step 1, 2, and 3? Like, can you remind me?
Yeah.
And so having that in between, I think, is really helpful.
Yeah, because nobody got to success overnight, right? Like,
Yeah.
what was it like? What were the early mistakes that were made, and how do we fast track for our younger or lesser experienced in this category?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
great. That's great. So, well, I look forward to hearing more about that. September, you said, whenever that
Yeah,
meeting happens,
early
and
September.
what comes
Yeah.
of that,
Yeah,
and hopefully hearing a bit more about that across Canada as well.
for sure. Yeah.
So we got some interesting, like we were saying off the top, like there's changes in the landscape. There's
Mhm.
different changes in the future of where myopia is heading, and there's information and data that we need to understand, maybe to help us understand which way we're heading.
Yeah.
And I know you were talking about Richard Edlow, who is the eye economist, and he's shared
Yeah.
some interesting data of late. So I'd love for you to share that, and then if we can extrapolate where that might be, help us understand where we're heading moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I always enjoy like Dr. Richard Edlow. He's humble, he's hardworking, and he just digs into the numbers of ophthalmologists and optometrists, at least in the US. And I thought I've always been quoting like 42,000 ODs, but apparently, as of this year, 2024, there's about 49,000
Mm,
ODs practicing in some way, shape, or form in the US. But when you kind of go back to some of my calculations on an ARVO poster, there's about 19.5 million children with myopia that are age 5 to 17. And probably not a lot of the juniors and seniors in high school need myopia control.
mm,
But if you kind of look at that 19 million number, and just for a moment, I guess we can remove all the retinal specialists and the glaucoma specialists, maybe
mm,
take out some of the ODs at the VA hospitals that won't see
mm.
children.
Right.
I kind of want to, the new math, if you will, Harbier. I think each OD has about 600 kids with myopia to treat. And that, again, sounds intimidating when we're just starting out, but that's the potential we can kind of
Yeah.
build up towards.
Yeah.
Yeah, 600 kids for each of us.
That's incredible. So the potential is there. So I think sometimes there's a couple of ways to look at that. Like, potentially that's intimidating. Whoa, that's a lot of kids. But
Mhm.
some others, colleagues might be wondering, like, is there really much opportunity in this space for me in my practice? And
Yeah,
clearly that
yeah.
number says there is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so other numbers that kind of I think we all have been aware of since we pay attention is like the number of ophthalmologists is sort of flat,
Mm,
including pediatric ophthalmology is slowly declining, sad to
oh,
say. And we know from a JAMA publication that there's 4 states, I believe, that don't even have a single pediatric ophthalmologist.
wow.
And when JAMA looks at like optometry as an MD sort of journal, they don't realize that optometrists, for the vast majority of us, do primary eye care, family care that starts as young as age 3, 4 years old. We just don't label ourselves as a pediatric
Hmm.
optometrist. And
Hmm.
so there's still a lot of cross professional education. I think that'll be valuable as we interact more with our pediatrician and peds ophtho colleagues.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. That I don't think we're often seen. I mean, I think we know optometry generally has a bit of a branding problem across the board,
Mm,
right? Whether
mhm,
you're looking at just our primary care that we provide, even in that case, we're kind of seen as just spinning the dial and giving a
yeah.
prescription versus the incredible amount of medical knowledge that we have and services we provide. But then let's go even more specialized. A lot of people, the public, other MDs, whoever, don't realize we do all these forms of specialty care.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
we need
yeah.
to maybe take it upon ourselves a little bit to brand ourselves a bit better.
Yeah, yeah. Good work to be done.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So let's talk about different types of numbers that
Yes.
have dollar signs in front of them.
Uh-huh.
Because I think those are the types of numbers that maybe open people's eyes a little bit and maybe see a little more potential, and it's not a bad thing to look at it that way. At the end of the day, most of us who are practicing within a business, and
Yeah,
the only way a business can survive, let alone grow, is to make money.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we want to make sure also, from a you know industry or profession perspective, we want to make sure that we are receiving the value for the services that we provide, appropriate value commensurate to, you know, the education and the training, everything that's gone behind it. This is something that I harp on all the time, right? When somebody's not charging enough, it's not because they're trying to fleece their patients. It's because they want to make sure that people are seeing the value in their education and their training. So I'm going to go, I'm about to go down a slippery slope and start talking about that for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to stop. Let's stop. I'm going to step off my soapbox. Let's talk about revenue though. And I know you want to look at revenue a little differently, and let's talk about how maybe we can improve, you know, the revenue that's gained.
Thankfully, like our profession is such experts in practice management, and I think the conversation has shifted away from revenue per patient, more towards revenue per hour. And when it comes to, you know, I guess what ODs maybe lose a little sleep over is always like staff and vision care plan reimbursements and so on. And like I said, Harbier, revenue should be one of the top things we talk about because inflation was very real in 2022, 2023, and maybe a little bit this year too. And how do we not just, you know, jack up our prices to keep up with inflation, but how do we even have a larger conversation? I'm very much about like an abundance mindset versus like scarcity and complaining and like, let's help ourselves. And one way to do that with myopia management is to kind of rethink that, okay, I can have a cost of goods sort of conversation, but that's still kind of like box by box, like 90 pack by 90 pack. But if you think about the whole care team and how many staff you have, whether you're in like 1,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet, the revenue per hour after cost of goods is about $700 with MySight. It's about $400 with Ortho-K, and it's about $300 with atropine. Remember the atropine, the families are buying the materials, the eye drops on the off a compounding pharmacy. But yeah, with the others, you still get that margin for your materials and your services. And I've seen a lot of doctors really just do an amazing job because once the kids get out of school during the school year, let's just say from 3 to 5 p.m., they have a lot of kids scheduled for follow-up 6-month visits and new starts to myopia programs. And that's when their revenue per hour is even higher, I would dare say, than that 700 per hour that I quoted. Because it's much harder to just do 2 comprehensive eye exams, potentially have 1 prescription walk for glasses. And, you know, that gets a little uncomfortable as you kind of watch your daily sales kind of roll through. And even in the sublease situation, I think a lot of our colleagues have tried to double their revenue per patient by almost requiring a wide field retinal image. And this is a really great way to 5x your revenue with myopia management.
Yeah. Certainly the revenue is there with a product like MySight, and going into specialty care in general, you can help to improve your revenue. In that scenario where you're quoting the $700 per hour, is that sorry, is that the number? Is that's in what's the patient? What is it, you know, schedule kind of looking like? Is that all you're in that scenario? It's all myopia patients, or is that assuming in that 1 hour segment you saw 1 or 2 myopia patients, or how would that break down?
Yeah. It's essentially taking one patient that agreed to start a program for MySight one day in this case. And then whatever the program fee is, whether you're 1,500 all in or 1,800, kind of breaking that down to how little chair time it takes to do a single vision daily disposable contact lens.
Right.
That is the treatment they need to use every day. And that part just kind of, you can parse out to just the 1 week visit, the 6-month visit, how much chair time that takes. And after you take out the cost of goods, that's how I land at the 700. So that's a converted patient. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. So you're taking that one patient, dividing how much chair time that child is taking over a year.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then kind of averaging that out to the hour.
Yeah. Yep.
So got it. Good to know. Yeah, definitely. So, and actually you sort of answered it already. I was going to ask you, so what's the follow-up schedule like for MySight, for example?
Yeah.
How many follow-ups are there on average in a year? And then, usually you're right. Usually a single vision lens fitting is pretty straightforward. It doesn't take that much extra chair time, but
Yeah.
we're checking their vision, maybe doing a refraction, I assume, axial
Yep.
length, things like that.
Mhm.
So how often are we seeing that child back?
Yeah. So if you subscribe to like same day conversion and you're able to have that impactful conversation, yeah, you can see them for the comprehensive for the 1 week, which you would have done anyways, for
Hmm.
single vision contact lenses. And then the only difference would be that 6 month visit. And that
Oh,
could, some practices lean on staff entirely, and
mm,
some practices, the doctor takes charge of that 6 month visit and everything in between. But yeah, I think if you think about following up on a single vision daily disposable, like it would take the same amount of chair time at that 6 month visit as the 1
yeah,
week.
yeah. That's a
Yeah.
fair point. I will say I generally, just for the sake of conversation here, I generally will see kids back every 3 months. Well,
Mhm.
it's flexible, right? So it depends on if
Mhm.
I have a 10-year-old who's a -1, I might only just do the 6-month visit, like you
Mhm.
stated. But
Mhm.
if I have a 7-year-old who's a -3,
Ooh,
I'm
yeah.
probably seeing a child back every 3 months. And so there's a bit of flexibility in that, and also then the rate of progression will also
Yeah.
determine how much we're.
Actually, that's a great point. I think 3 months makes sense on the purchase cycle of 90 packs, but actually the evidence for how kids with myopia grow, 3 months doesn't really give you a whole lot other than getting face-to-face time with the mom, the
That's a fair
dad, and
point.
the child.
Yep.
I think for the younger fast progressors, in that case example, every 4 months would be good, and then spacing it out to every six. But not a lot
That's
of clinical utility for 3 months because some of that change or lack of change could be buried within the noise of
totally
how kids grow. Yeah.
100%. So I actually, speaking just empirically or
Yeah.
anecdotally from my clinical experience, I would say 100% I agree. It often will take 6 months or so to see the impact of any form of myopia management, any
Mhm.
treatment that we're applying. The actual value of that 3 month is the face to face, A,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
B is getting some extra just data points, especially the axial length. So I just like to get as many axial length data points as I can to create a bit of a curve as quickly as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. As far as, I don't expect, and I tell parents that up front most often, I don't expect to see a
Mhm.
dramatic change in 3 months. It's at least 6 months, if not longer,
Mhm.
before we start to see the impact of the treatment that we're applying. But
Yeah.
that's a good point. So thank
Yeah.
you for
Yeah.
sharing
Yeah.
that.
Of course.
So, with the collective and all these things, you're talking primarily in those scenarios, your change agents are people who are already into myopia management, dabbling at least. But there's many of our colleagues who are not quite into it as much as maybe you and I would like to see. But I think what the demand is, to meet the demand even of these 600 kids per optometrist in the United States, and it's probably not that different in Canada when you do the average out the ratios and all of that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
so I know you have some reasoning here. I'd like you to, if you wouldn't mind sharing, like, why do you think we haven't quite caught on to myopia management? Is it just it's too early? Like, we haven't heard about it enough? I don't think so.
Probably
Or
not. Yeah.
is there
Yeah.
something else going on? Why do you think some of our colleagues are a bit hesitant?
Yeah, we got to look at tons of surveys just in the audiences we reach and the hundreds, sometimes thousands of people we're in front of. Virtually, obviously, lends itself to the thousands. But just again, I think in 2024, the reasons why, like maybe somebody only has two patients treated for myopia control, and that's okay, right? They've started. Versus like, what were the barriers back in COVID or 2021 could be a little different. But
Mm-hmm.
Harbier, it seems to be like a pretty common theme of like, I don't have enough pediatric patients. It takes too much time,
Mm-hmm.
or it's too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Either it's too expensive for the practice from a cost of goods, or it's too expensive for the families. Which
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's more of the latter because maybe parents have this perception that I can buy expensive progressives or multifocals for myself, but my kids don't need something that expensive. And there's that disconnect, like, no, this is a treatment, not something that's elective, if you will, right? And
Yeah.
I always joke that, maybe more older adults are buying contact lenses now for pickleball, but
It's true, though. It is true. That's a funny point, but it's true.
yeah, but yeah, when I looked at the survey results that just came through last week, it seemed like 1/3 of the respondents said, yeah, didn't have enough pediatric patients when we kind of dispelled that myth with the census data. The cost thing being too expensive to the practice, I would like kind of, I guess, counter back with there's actually 5 premium daily disposables that are more expensive than my site.
Oh,
So, and those are growing really well, growing really quickly in our optometric marketplace. So I don't think it's the cost of goods. Cost of the family, yeah, that's probably a very real thing. They're not used to it. They're looking for what their insurance covers.
yeah.
Even if you say like $3 a day or 100 a month, that helps a little bit. But again, flipping it into the value. You talked about value earlier. Like this is delivering the treatment or the medication. Oh, by the way, the side effect is clear vision, which we needed to give them anyways, right?
Right.
But yeah, 2-in-1 value, I think, is another way to reframe like how expensive it is to the family. But it takes practice to have that conversation.
Yeah,
And
it
I
does.
wouldn't say I'm perfect at it either. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are
Um,
those are all valid points. So those are the three general barriers or kind of pushback that you'll get from ODs is A, I don't think I have enough pediatric patients.
uh-huh.
B,
It's too
uh,
expensive.
it's
Yeah.
too expensive for the
The doctor or the family or
uh-huh,
both.
or
Yeah.
both.
And then the last one is I don't have enough time.
I don't have enough time. Time is
Yeah.
a tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back with sometimes we do workshops where we ask, like, hey, if a parent said, I've never heard about this before, how would you respond? And like, oh my gosh, like if they said that, I would have to take time to explain it. But I recently had this epiphany, Javier, that I'm like, a lot of the times patients come to us and they are hearing about everything we do for the very first time. Back to what you said about optometry having a branding problem, right?
Mhm.
So I don't think that's unique to myopia specifically. It's like, oh, I've never heard of computer progressives before for my 3 monitors. Oh, I've never heard about hypochlorous acid before as a starting point for my dry eye treatment. Like they
Mhm.
haven't heard about a ton of stuff before.
That's
That's
true.
just a reality. So I don't want us to think about like myopia being a 15 or 5-minute conversation. You can easily get that done with one visual, 30 seconds, and just be confident with your prescribing. So not having enough time, I think we can help. Like we've
Yeah.
created quick start things. We have videos of our fellow colleagues doing this conversation in less than a minute. So we'd be happy to support in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful. I think that part, yeah, time is and even the cost part, anything that requires the implementation and the conversation with the parent, I think that's where industry can really help, right? There's
Yeah.
programs there, training there. There's now ODs, other ODs in your area that may be able to share information with you on how they got started or how they overcome certain hurdles. It is, I mean, it's going to take time. It's
Yeah,
not going to take zero time,
for sure. For
but
sure.
we also so there's a couple of different ways I look at that. Is A, if you have a practitioner, private practice, primary care, if if you're sort of doing sort of just primary care, I feel like that's going to become a bit of an issue as time goes on. I don't think
Hmm.
we can only do primary care
Forever.
now,
Yeah.
unless you're like certain pockets of the country, maybe.
Yeah.
But like for me, like being around Vancouver, there's no chance. Primary care is not going to help me. Like there's just too much other competition and other big players and
Yeah.
other entities. So specialty care is going to be important. So I'm going to have to put the time in at some point to either do dry eye or myopia or VT or something to
Hmm.
differentiate myself. Um, and the other thing is that maybe you already have specialized in something. It takes time. You've done it before, but you also know that having the systems in place will help make that more efficient and help it move forward. So I think that's something we'll have to overcome at some point, the time part. But having the training, having Cooper provide resources is going to help make that more move
And
more quickly.
we're honest with ourselves. It is different for a lot of practices, but different doesn't have to mean complicated, right? We can
Yeah,
make it simple. And
yeah,
that mindset, again, I think will help us convey to the families and the parents and the children, like how rewarding and amazing and simple it can be. And this is the best thing for your child. And I think that's what, again, starts that emotional connection piece. Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, Justin. Any other information? Because there have been lots of insightful points here that you've made that even I haven't really thought about or heard about before. And certain connections that are going to help me sort of maybe tweak or improve my myopia management practice. And as we said, hopefully reach my potential.
Yeah.
But, you know, help more kids for sure. So anything else you want to share on that topic that you think might be helpful?
Yeah, I think the call to action is, again, the simplicity part is you need somebody to help you. You can't do it alone. Whether it's your office manager or one of your technicians, help each other kind of have 10 conversations a week. If you see 10 adult patients tomorrow, just talk to all 10 about myopia management, or talk to them about their kids and bringing their kids in. And I think that if you can just start with 10 conversations, you'll eventually start to kind of, I guess, cultivate or flex that muscle so that it becomes more second nature rather than a intentional cognitive, like, okay, I have to do this. It becomes, again, more natural. And I think that's a great starting point, is to aim for 10 conversations a week.
I love that. 10 conversations. That's good. So SMART goals, right?
Yeah.
You got specific there. It's
Yes.
attainable.
Yeah.
I like that, measurable. So I want to just echo that, if you don't mind, Justin. You know, I give a presentation on myopia management. It's called the Myopia Startup. So it's very much like beginner level, like how do I get started in myopia management? And the number one thing I say is have the conversation. That's like the number one thing you have to. If you're not talking about it, how is anybody going to know about that you offer it? And also, like, if you're not talking about it, how are you going to get good at talking about it? It's practice. And you don't have to start saying like, we offer this. It's more like just having the conversation about myopia. And I think you're right. You don't even have to do it if you don't have kids in your practice. Talk to a myopic parent. You know, if you have a -10 in your chair, hey, do you have kids? Well, do you know that they're at greater risk of developing myopia if they don't already, right? And having that conversation, that's huge.
Yeah. I can role play with you really quick because I think this
Sure.
will help people.
Wait, we're still talking about myopia role play, right? All right.
Yeah. If I'm the doctor and you're the parents, I'll be like, Harbier, I have good news and bad news. What do you want to hear first?
Good news.
Good news. The good news is we can finally treat this nearsightedness thing from getting worse as your daughter grows. The bad news is it's going to get worse as she grows up, right? As children grow, their eye stretches longer. And at the core of the issue is that with nearsightedness, the eye is growing too long, too fast, and getting weaker. But again, great news. We finally have something today that we didn't have a couple of years back.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, that's and how long did that take you? Like 30 seconds to say that?
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this to you when we recorded last year. There's sort of my two statements that I use that I feel like really seem to connect with parents. One is, especially if the parent is myopic and you know wearing glasses, or they've told me they're wearing contacts. The first one is, you know, when we were kids, we didn't have anything to help us slow this down. Like, can you imagine if you had something that helped slow down the progression? Do you remember every time you went in, you got a new pair of glasses or new prescription? And then the second one is like, you know, if the child sitting in the chair, say, if this was my child, here's what I would recommend. You know, that one is kind of the clutch one that parents want to hear in general, right? Like even before I started doing myopia management, they would ask me about various things like, what would you do if this was your kid? And so I feel like both of those land quite quickly.
It does. And it
parents.
builds that kind of culture of them coming back to you for that family environment and the best care possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, where can people find more information about Cooper, MySight, all this kind of stuff?
Yeah. So even for doctors, you can go to mysight.com and kind of navigate through the top, or of course, always CooperVision.com, the practitioner page. But yeah, you can find me on socials. My Instagram is JustinTime814, and I'm pretty consistently on LinkedIn, and you can find me in many different places.
I love it. Thank you again for coming on and sharing all this amazing information. Big thanks to CooperVision for supporting the podcast and for providing resources and products for ODs in various practice modalities, but in specific in myopia management. So thanks again to Cooper for doing that. And thank you to everybody who's watching and listening to the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
So good. Thanks, Harbier.